Hello everyone and welcome to FiST Chat, the vodcast that features discussions on the topics of film, science and technology. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. You're looking very dapper there today, Steve. Any special occasion, or did you just want to dress up for the fans today?
Yeah, well, actually, speaking of the fans out there in FiST Chat land, someone tweeted me, said, how about I have a shave and dress nicely for FiST Chat? So I have.
Oh, well, thanks for putting in the effort there. I'm feeling quite underdressed myself at the moment.
Yeah, it's okay, Ben. You're a good-looking guy. You know, I've got to dress up just to cut it.
Oh, well, thank you. Okay, well, now that we've got that out of the way, we're going to talk about technology and education today. And as always, we don't want to necessarily make this the Apple show, but we're going to start with an announcement that they made a few weeks back just in relation to education. And they made some fairly interesting announcements, mainly to do with a new piece of software called iBook Author or something like that it was called. In essence, you'll be able to create textbooks for the iBook store and sell them through there yourself. So it's an amazing thing. And there's also the announcements to do with iTunes U, and you can get all the, you can take courses directly through that app. You don't get the piece of paper, of course, because you have to pay however many tens of thousands for that and still attend at the university itself. But quite amazing, isn't it, Steve?
Well, it is amazing. I think you said announcements by Apple, or were they just demands? That's the question,
yeah.
Ben. But, I mean, I think worldwide at the moment, Apple are rolling out a bit of an education campaign, something they haven't done for a long, long time. And Apple always has had an education focus. That's something always, I think, that Steve Jobs is very keen on. The iPad is a remarkable device, and, you know, as always with Apple, or Steve Jobs' influence, obviously, and I'm sure he thought of this years ago, he thought, what can we put on a device like the iPad? And a textbook is just the answer, and it's so much more powerful than I guess, you know, a print format. I don't know if it will turn every student into an A-grade student as they claim, but it certainly will alter education forever.
Well, essentially, they've gone much farther than just saying we're just putting textbooks on the iPad. What they're basically talking about here is making an interactive, very deeply enriched, content-based sort of textbook where it's not about turning a whole bunch of pages over. You're going to have video embedded, you're going to have audio embedded, you're going to have dynamic pages where you can interact. This is a whole other level of textbook, and it really, if you think about the way they're going about it, and they're sort of putting this demand in, it's saying that you must sell them for no more than $15, a pop kind of thing on the at the Apple Store, but it's an amazing thing. And I remember, I think we talked last year about iPads, and I'm sort of getting closer to a point where I'm finding a use for it myself, but more so than last year. But one thing I did recognize right from the beginning when the iPad came out was that it would be a natural fit for education. You can just imagine replacing 100 kilos of textbooks that kids carry around in their bags with just this nice little device that slips neatly into your backpack, and it carries far more textbooks than you could ever imagine. Thousands of them, all in this tiny little device, really.
Yeah, without any spinal damage. Welcome, Ben, to the Apple schooling system and Apple University, which I'm sure it's going to become.
Yeah.
But look, I've heard people say that this business model won't work, and I don't know if anyone can predict whether it will or not. What's interesting, though, is that the price, as you say, that price point, $15, is a lot lower than what you would pay for a hard copy version. So people are in front there. Now, whether or not that's bad for the textbook makers, I don't know, but you won't be able to resell your copy of the textbook. So I don't know what people are going to do with all their Year 7 textbooks in the cloud when they're in their 30s, but they'll still be there for them, maybe for their kids, maybe updated, who knows.
But maybe that's why the price is so low.
Well, it should be, because if you take out all the cost of print, then in effect that once you have the actual information, it becomes very affordable. And the fact that everyone will have to buy their own personal copy and there won't be a second-hand market for these books, then pretty much means, I guess, unless you sell your iPad with access to all the books on it, I'm not sure if that's possible with the cloud, then, they will sell more copies of their information. But interestingly, when you talk about, or people talk about Apple trying to monopolise the market, where are the competitors? I mean, everyone's, saying Apple's, shutting off this or doing that. They've only just invented tablets in the other part of the PC or computing world.
Or at least...
I'm speechless, Ben.
Oh, well, at least they've invented tablets that the way people want to use them. They've actually had...
That's one manufacturer actually has, Ben. One other manufacturer. I don't know.
But that's the interesting thing. In reading a lot of the stories around these announcements in education, there's been this talk of Apple sort of, as you're saying, sort of stepping in, potentially trying to take over. Well, it depends on what their motivations are, but the idea that they could monopolize this type of market. It's not like selling a movie or a TV show where, you're locked into their ecosystem. You can only watch that content using an Apple device, etc. But that's not really the same thing. If you're talking about education, that's really more of a right. It's more of a, if you know what I mean, it's not like, it's not content in the same way that you would consume any other type of content. So they produce this sort of system. They've come out now with this system that really is better than anything else that anyone else has come up with. People are naturally going to start gravitating towards it. And the story or suggestions that are coming out now is if everyone starts going down that route and sort of following the way Apple does it and they start monopolizing it, that can't be a good thing either. Because if they're going to sort of control it, is it going to turn into like Apple Earth or something where, everything we do is followed through them? That's sort of like the more conspiracy theory side of things that I've been hearing, but I'm sure they're not really looking at it at that level. But
I don't know, Ben. If you look at the vested interests, there's a cartel of textbook makers globally, and they stand to lose a lot from this. And they stand to lose a lot because they have seen a whole lot of changes in the last 10 years and done nothing. The rest of the computing industry has done nothing. The only thing Apple really has a monopoly on is innovation, because in 30 years of computing, we've seen nothing. Nothing. Yeah. Apple has done everything first, and I'm not an Apple fanboy thing here, but did anyone ever create anything that could compete with the iPod?
Yeah, no.
No. Did anyone ever make anything that could compete even with the old iMacs?
Yeah.
Current iMacs, MacBooks.
It must be just too hard.
Well, maybe it is too hard. I don't know. But when people complain that Apple's got some sort of monopoly, it's only because they've set out, and their whole ethos always has been to design a product. And it's always been to design a standalone product. Now,
but maybe that's where it comes in. That's where the problem is. We were discussing before about how all that sort of thing occurs. Steve Jobs' vision was to have a closed system for everything, and he hasn't really changed that since the very beginning.
He's never changed that,
and it seems to fit a lot of these things. One downside of a closed system is that you have to do it the way Apple tells you, but the advantage of it is that it's more likely to work consistently across all of their devices, and it provides you with that consistent experience. That's why you've got that reputation where you go into Apple's ecosystem, they suddenly say, "Oh, I can't believe this is such a better computing experience," because on the PC side, everything's interchangeable. It's all open. You sort of mix and match. You can do whatever, and none of these things.
Until recently, it's all been rubbish.
That's right, and these things, because they're not made together to work together specifically, they're not going to work as well. And this is just another case in point with the education thing, because I've got this device called the iPad, and they've created all this software now that is going to really change the dynamic in terms of how education is presented.
I look, completely agree, and my only the only extra point I'd add to that is when some opposition actually builds something that's functional, and isn't just about being a tablet, but is about being, say, as Steve Jobs would have viewed it, an education device, and works together with someone to actually produce some educational content for their tablet, then Apple will be open to competition. The biggest problem is not evil Apple. It's the lack of any sort of motive to build these things other than profit by the others.
Yeah,
and that's quite sadly why we've seen such a lack of innovation in an industry which should be full of it.
Yeah. Absolutely, we've said it already, but this aspect in education, this is really where, I don't know if you remember when the iPad first came out, and there was these claims that it's just a big iPod, but it's nothing else. It's really for this. This is really what it's this type of thing that the iPad was built for. Yeah. It's not necessarily people sitting down in the coffee shop flicking through Facebook. This is what this type of device was made for, and it's gonna do well. And maybe it would be helpful if there were some other competitors out there that could produce something comparable to that. The irony, of course, is that maybe the only other company that could do it is maybe Amazon, because they've got books. They know how to deliver an ecosystem with that type of content. And if they, maybe make a Kindle device that does something like this, then maybe that'll be a competitor.
I actually think that that's spot on, and I think that Amazon is the dark horse in this. I mean, Samsung actually make a decent tablet, but they've not made it for any other purpose except what, as you were saying, what the iPad was originally used for, which is flipping through Facebook or, staring at a web page. And these are the things that I think, we'll see great advances in. I mean, what those textbooks on an iPad will enable is a whole new way of teaching. Whether or not teaching can keep up with these changes or get there quickly enough is a whole other question. Whether Apple will be successful is another question. Until there's competition and a choice of platforms, then yes, we will see domination of the market.
And just one final thing that just sort of popped into my head there, and this is more on the education side. It's got to do with the actual bureaucracy behind education. And it just occurred to me that doesn't seem to coexist necessarily with, Apple's finely tuned closed ecosystem. I was hearing in America, for example, that, it's all state-based school boards that have to approve every textbook, and then you'd get cases where one textbook might have 50 different versions for all the different states because they want to teach this part or that part. And that should be interesting when those two things come together and hit their heads against each, they butt heads. What will happen there? Are they which one's going to give in?
Well, the interesting thing on that is that it's much cheaper to do 50 versions of ebooks than 50 versions of hard print. So,
that's true.
These are really, really interesting questions. And it's probably what you've hit on there is the market probably isn't as mature as the technology that it's now going to have access to. I mean, we still haven't given up newspapers yet, even though there's not much reason to have a hard copy print newspaper.
Yeah.
Textbooks, I don't know. And education, well, they're all very interesting things, but we have seen, with schools that people will pay for what they perceive to be a better product or a better educational product. So maybe Apple has come in right at the right time, and maybe we will see an Apple University sometime in the future.
As they've done so often in the past in other markets. So that's probably a good place to finish up. So thanks again, Steve, for the chat.
Thanks, everyone. I hope I look good enough for you out there.
Absolutely. There's absolutely
Tweet me
no
if you love
me. We can do a poll on Steve's dress sense this week. That'll be awesome. So don't forget our website's at www.fistchat.com. You can get all our links there. Watch our videos. We'll have blogs this week on education and technology, the exciting advances that are happening there. So that's it for this week's episode. We'll catch you next week.